Welcome to the AskOkey podcast. Pete here, and my guest, as usual, the Prof, back from traveling in foreign parts, and we're happy to be with you once again. Watch out this evening because we're going to tell you all about what's been happening here at AskOkey and a couple of your questions as well to be answered. Don't forget, like and subscribe. There's no point liking if you don't subscribe. If you don't want to subscribe or you don't want to like, well, that's a free country, as they say, and that's up to you. Prof,
Yes.
Tell us what's been going on. You've been away, you came back, and then we had the MTM launch.
Yes, indeed. It's been a very what's the right word? Well, let's just
Tumultuous.
Tumultuous, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Very hectic past few weeks indeed. As you said in the last podcast, you can't seem to find anyone.
Yes.
Everyone is running off in all different directions
Indeed.
in the office. But no, it's been a very busy past few weeks. I was in Japan for a week, followed by another week in Korea,
Yeah, okay.
in Seoul. And while I was in Japan, of course, we had an opportunity to have to host a dinner for our AskOkey followers who are
Right.
based in Tokyo, and some customers. Very well attended. It was at
Good.
the MEM hotel in Tokyo.
Right.
It was a really superb event.
Good. Good.
And then I traveled to Osaka,
Right.
where we have our workshop, and I spent a few days on the shop floor doing what we do. So basically, this was full leading to the launch. So it was just literally, it was a formality really.
Right.
As you know, this has been in the works for months and even years. This is something we knew was coming right from the onset, even at the launch of the Bespoke. It was just a question of timing.
Yes, indeed, yes.
And so the time arrived, and we started to put the building blocks together about a year ago.
Yep.
And it took a while to get everything in place. And so my visit to the workshop was more or less just a formality, just
Right,
to
okay.
ensure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And of course, I was personally very satisfied with the level of preparation that had been undertaken. So returned back to base, and again back into the frying pan, in the manner of speaking. I came back, I couldn't locate anyone.
Right.
Because everyone was running different directions, just last minute preparations for the MTM launch. So it's it's fair to say, at least in my own opinion, that it was just a textbook case of masterclass in execution.
Really?
Absolutely, the team did just a fantastic, phenomenal
Good.
job across the board, across all departments. Design, production, technology, media, just sort of very well coordinated effort, which all culminated in the launch last Friday, June the 27th.
That's right. It seems like an awfully long time ago, but it wasn't.
Indeed, it's been only 3 or 4 days ago, Pete. So
Yes, and it seems like weeks ago, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And so what did you do in Korea?
Korea was more of an exploratory trip. We have been thinking about, again, this is just, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but we're thinking of a number of products that we're going to launch down the line. And when I say products, I don't necessarily mean sort of tailoring. As you know, AskOkey is a brand, and we currently offer accessories that are made under our brand, not by us, by contractors,
Sure.
made under our brand. And so the idea is to continue to launch, expand our repertoire of accessories as time goes on. Not just accessories as in sort of one, but also grooming items.
Right.
Basically everything that is needed in the universe of a classic gentleman.
Right.
So again,
right.
I don't want to let on too much.
Right. Yes,
But
yes.
we have we're working with a very large Korean partner. In fact, a multi-billion-dollar listed company, which is a very large industrial base, and they're going to be our partners in Korea, and we're going to be working on R&D, research and development.
Right.
Mostly market research, looking at
Right.
what are the products we can introduce into our pyramid, so to speak, to serve our current audience across our entire digital footprint.
But not obviously forgetting about the jewel in the crown, as it were, which is the bespoke.
Well,
and
if you think
the
about
Bugatti,
if you,
as
if you think about our product pyramid, Pete, and you would know this as an MBA, bespoke is right at the apex, at the top, right? It's our most expensive item, right? It's our crown jewel. Our bespoke suits start at about $4,000, and then it just sort of goes on from there, right? So that's at the top of the pyramid, and then now we've introduced MTM. Right. I would say somewhere around the middle of the pyramid. I mean, it's still not a giveaway. Our MTM suits start at $1,500.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
And then depending on the fabric of choice, right, it could get up to the 2000s. I mean, if you're very particular, if you're a fabric aficionado and you want to go for, cashmere, for instance.
That's right, Vicuna.
Then, or Vicuna, whatever it is, right? So let's say it starts at about $1,500, whereas bespoke starts at $4,000. So that places our MTM at somewhere in the middle of the pyramid. Now, you have to understand, and you would appreciate that we have a very large audience.
Yes.
We have about 3 million followers across all social platforms. Now, not even a fraction of those can afford the bespoke product, or maybe even the MTM product.
Or are actually interested in it.
Or are interested. And so there's a large base, of our audience that exists sort of at the bottom of that pyramid that are unserved. And our mandate, in a way, or sort of our mission, our commercial mission, is to find products to fill that gap. What are products that we talk about, or things that we proselytize about?
Right, sure.
That can help the life of an average, person at the bottom of that pyramid.
Sure.
And when I say bottom of pyramid, it says nothing of their means or anything. It's just sort of maybe they're not interested in the top of the pyramid items. So what else could be of value to them that we could provide at the bottom of that pyramid? So we're talking about just sort of lifestyle products, right? Accessories, lifestyle accessories, without going into naming specific products, but think about lifestyle accessories, things that are useful to everyday classic gentleman, right?
Right, okay.
So these are the type of products that we're going to be looking at with our Korean partners, because these are things that are made in large quantities, large numbers, and they do have the large industrial base. And capability to provide those products for us. So that was basically the point, or the basis of the extension of my trip to Korea.
Scouting.
Pretty much.
Scouting, and so you...
Reconnaissance, as we would say in the military.
Yes. And so how do you find the menswear atmosphere in Japan? Are they wearing suits? Are they wearing full-cut suits? Skinny jeans? Well, what are they up to?
The Japanese dress very well. Actually, they do dress quite well compared to, they also have sort of the salaryman culture, right? What I did notice was a preponderance of black suits, which I found to be quite odd. A lot of black suits, but I understand it's a very Japanese thing.
Is it? Yeah.
Sort of a black suit is sort of considered sort of the classy, typical business, which I find really odd. But I'd heard this before, but I saw it for myself. A lot of people wore black suits to work. But generally speaking, I would say the suit culture there is strong and alive, much more so than I would say in the West.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I noticed people sort of just generally made an effort. Generally made an effort. But the Japanese society is a very polite one. People, it's very, very strong culture. Very traditional, very polite.
Yes.
So generally people were, decent, even when they weren't like, say, the best quality suits. But generally men made an effort. Women too dressed very well.
Really?
Just walking down the street, I stayed in Ginza, which is sort of more of an upper, I guess what you call a posh neighborhood, with all the fancy stores and everything. So quite a few tourists as well. But Tokyo is a treat for for sore eyes.
Really?
Oh yes, it's a beautiful city. The people are just very well organized and just sort of people carry themselves with a lot of dignity in the way
Interesting.
they dress. And
Interesting.
Korea was very different, very very different. I was really shocked by the difference, how market different. So if you think about the Japanese as the British,
Yeah.
Koreans are Americans.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Very loud, flamboyant, expressive, more entrepreneurial.
Right. Right.
Just sort of generally much more, well, I guess it's more
Livelier, perhaps.
lively, even aggressive. And you can see it in the way they dress as well.
Yeah.
You see more of the designer brands.
Right,
Like
okay.
when you walk around, people are wearing more. I mean, they're all dressed nicely, but you see more of the designer brands and people wearing Gucci shoes, Whereas in Japan, everything's sort of a bit more toned down,
Restrained.
very restrained. So I liken Japan to England or sort of Britain, whereas Korea is more, even the buildings, even the architecture, right?
Right.
The roads are much wider in Korea.
Okay.
Again, it's a new society, right? 50 years ago, 60 years
right.
ago,
That's
these were
right.
all rice fields.
Yeah.
And they were modeled largely after new American cities like Atlanta, Dallas.
Okay.
Whereas Tokyo looks like New York.
Yeah.
It looks exactly like New York that was, sort of built in the 20s and late 19th century.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's my observation in terms of how people dress. The Koreans or the Japanese sort of a lot more subdued and sort of classic in sort of their appearance. Koreans are just, much more expressive, brands, even the cars, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, they're just very, very showy.
Wow.
They're just very, very so much. In Japan, you would hardly see any of these fancy cars.
Really?
You might see an odd limousine here and there, but generally, sort of people sort of take public transport, or you see them driving sort of these very, very small, modest Japanese cars.
A Lexus or something.
Well,
If you're feeling fancy.
Lexus is not very modest. You don't even see that many Lexuses
really?
there. No.
All for the export market.
It's for the export market.
Interesting. So really, you had a chance to get a really good look at a different place.
Yes.
And I guess the one of the things about which we know about Japanese workmanship, of course, is very high standard, attention to detail,
Absolutely.
tremendous flair for design and layout. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The way the food is served, for example, the pictures, and probably very, very good quality control. So we're in safe hands with the workshop there.
Absolutely. No, the finishing is absolutely top notch. And I even sort of took some time out to make some reels in the workshop of some of our own garments that were in production. And the finishing is just absolutely what you would expect of Japanese. Clinical.
Really?
I sort of, I was showing one of the online jackets because that's really where you see the true art.
Right.
With online jackets, there's really nowhere to hide because you see the, with a lining, you can hide a lot of crap. But when the coat is online, you actually see it, and it was just absolutely marvelous. And I showed it on our Instagram stories. I think it was a suit that was being made for Hashin. Ahead of design. It's just sort of absolutely masterful, clinical, just what you would expect of the Japanese.
Great. So the customers have something to look forward to, and obviously we can. It fits it mirrors the kind of quality that people have come to expect from us, and the attention to detail and everything.
Absolutely.
So tell us, in the MTM world or universe of AskOkey, you do the measurements with AI.
Correct.
They were telling me.
Yes. Also known as artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence.
Everybody knows.
But then we use our own intelligence, I think. Do we to make the allowances or something after you've got the AI measurements?
Pete, a lot of this information is proprietary.
Right, okay.
And so without sort of raising our skirts up too high, we can talk a little bit about that without sort of, raising the skirt too high. In a manner of speaking, of course, figuratively speaking, since I don't wear skirts. For those of you who insist that PROFF is gay. So the whole idea, Pete, is this is AI, as we know, is the future. And we've been playing around with AI for the past at least a year and a half. You know, we've sort of trialed it with some of our bespoke customers with really, really satisfactory, you know, impressive results. However, we thought that with the launch of the MTM, this would be a good opportunity to put it to test at scale.
Indeed, yes.
At scale. And so when, you know, with the bespoke option, we give the customers the option of either sort of inputting their measurements manually or the AI. But with the MTM, we thought it would be a good opportunity for us to standardize and perfect the AI process. So that's why we launched it right off the bat as the sole means of data capture, so to speak. Data capture means getting your measurements. Now, the idea is once you go through our typical order process, which is standard with the bespoke and MTM. You know, you pick the model you want. I want a single-breasted suit. I want a 2-button or 3-button or 1-button. You know, I want a ticket pocket. I want a flat pocket. I want a patch pocket. I want cuffs. You know, I want cuffs on my trousers. I want, you know, pleat, whatever it is. So, you know, you go through all those steps and then you pick the fabric.
Right.
And then we have just sort of a menagerie, a broad menagerie of options of fabrics.
Indeed, we do.
Both from our Japanese suppliers and from our English mills, which are available to our bespoke customers. So, you know, in fact, I think the problem is that, you know, customers might run into a problem of having too much choice. You know, too many options, and that's something that concerns us as well. Why we want to sort of provide value by providing as many options as possible. So, but we have to sort of, you know, limit it as well. So we try to find that balance between just enough to offer sufficient variety, and you know, and not so much that we overwhelm the customer. So once you're done picking the cut, or the options and the styling, and picking the fabric, and then sort of you go through the checkout process. Now at checkout, you'll be told that once you check out, you will be required to provide your scan, a physical scan, which is how we secure your measurements. So once you check out, you'll be presented with a page where there's actually a scanner in the system. Right, that guides you. It's a voice-guided scanner with images. Basically, it's sort of very intuitive. It's almost sort of like, sorry to use this word, but like really even an idiot, a monkey can figure it out. That is how intuitive it is. So you go through it. It's basically, you can only do it using your phone. Because, and it works on any phone, whether it's Android, it's platform agnostic. Works on Android, or sort of iOS, which is iPhone, or any other platforms that is commercially available. But these are the two main platforms. You require a phone with a camera, and basically it guides you and tells you where to stand, how to stand. And then once sort of you stand in the right position and it captures your image, it goes green, which shows, okay, we've got it. So it's going to ask you to sort of like pose, sort of give like 2 or 3 different poses. It takes really 5 minutes.
Amazing.
Not even 5 minutes. And I think that's something to stress, because, you know, we've seen a lot of customers that have made the purchase, and then when they get to the point of the AI, some people get intimidated. They kind of back up, I'll do it later, because they think it's a sort of it's a cumbersome, you know, laborious process. It's really just 2-3 minutes.
Amazing.
If you're very handy with tech tools, right, it might even take you like 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes.
And it gets it right.
It's absolutely 100%.
Amazing.
I mean, some of the customers were absolutely bewildered. You know, they were bewildered that they were so accurate, because one of them, you know, sent us a message on Instagram like this is absolutely mind-blowing. That he basically second checked. He checked over the measurements with his own tape that the AI produced, and it was absolutely spot on.
Interesting. So this makes it easier for everybody, and at the same time, we don't sacrifice the important measurements that we have to have.
Absolutely.
In order for the workshop
to do it.
We get
at least 80 to 100 different measurement points by the AI. And
Really?
we don't need 80 to 100, but
No,
we
no.
have an abundance of measurement options just from 2 scans.
Interesting.
That's how good the technology is.
And then the
And
clothing
it's only
team.
going to get better.
Right.
It's only going to get better. In
Yes.
fact, in the last 6 to 12 months, it's evolved so much that the version we started with 12 months ago is now obsolete.
Interesting.
When we started working on this project, the first version we started looking at, we sort of upgraded it several times, and it just keeps getting better. It's sort of like, what do you call it, Moore's Law. You know, Moore's Law.
Yeah,
Like,
twice the power in half the time.
it's absolutely, like, I can imagine in the next year, within a year, I can only imagine how sophisticated the AI solutions are going to be.
Well, one has a vision, okay, of a sewing machine in your own house, and with AI, all you have to do is type in the instructions and feed in a piece of cloth, and out
does
comes
the
a
rest.
suit. One hopes that doesn't happen because people like us will be out of business.
Well,
but
I don't see that happening, and because I mean AI is just, you can't kind of robot really make a garment. It's, I guess, technically possible, but it hasn't been done, right?
No,
I mean, it still requires humans, even for factory-made garments.
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
You have
yeah.
machines. You
Yeah.
have robots guided by humans.
that's right. Yes.
right?
Yes,
So to
yes.
sort of ask a robot to make a complete garment, it's just never been done. I mean, does it mean it will never be done? Never to be done? I don't know. But think about it. The process of making a garment, just there's a lot
Yes.
of human judgment involved, right?
Yes.
Even when the processes are standardized, there's
Yeah.
still a lot of human judgment
Yeah,
involved.
sure,
So
sure.
I don't think that robots will take over the role of at least humans governing the machine, so to speak. For instance, in our MTM factory, our MTM is far more mechanized.
Yeah.
At Bespoke shop, you will hardly see any machines there. It's just basically sewing machines for straight lines. Everything is completely handmade.
Sure.
In our MTM shop, sort of, it's more
It's industrial.
It's industrial. So the cutting machine, we use a CNC laser cutter because we're just moving a lot more volume through it. The canvas machine, the canvas is attached by a machine. So it's a machine, so a lot of different things. So there's a lot more machines involved with the MTM shop, but they're still guided by humans.
Absolutely. And of course the patterns made by humans.
Absolutely.
And cut by humans. In fact, we had a question here. Somebody sent in a question related to this, and he said, can the factory make the full cut?
Well, that is what we do.
So no, I think what he's got in mind, he may have seen the pictures of the prototype MTM garments and wondering if in fact he can get that real full cut.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, you can.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, that's why you develop a pattern.
There you go.
That's why we develop a pattern. Now, that fullness is going to vary from customer to customer.
Well, that was the next question.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not going to cut trousers as full. I'm 6'1" almost. I'm not going to cut them as full as for someone who's Tim's, Tim's height. Tim's 5'6", right?
There we go.
5'5", 5'6". But if you look at his MTM promotional pictures, for instance, he's gone for a fairly, like, for instance, even for a 5'6", he's gone for 10 inches. Width at the bottom, which some people will be like, whoa, that's huge. But it looks incredible, even at 5'6".
Yeah, it does look very well.
Even at 5'6". So what we've done is that, for the MTM, it's a standard full cut. However, the customer has the luxury or the privilege of being able to specify how wide they want it. So I think our standard leg opening for the MTM is about, let's say, about 9 inches.
Which is pretty narrow.
9 inches is, well, I mean, it's about, like, I wear 10 inches,
there you go.
for my classic cut.
For your classic cut, and so 9, no, that's.
That's about 9 is about sort of like, I mean, modern trousers are like 7, those spindle trousers are like 7 inches.
You can hardly get your foot in.
6.5 inches, absolutely. But 9 inches, 8.5, 9 is what some would consider just sort of that middle road.
Yep.
You know, but for us to get that classic drape look, right? It works with 10 inches.
Sure,
and that's even when you're 5'6", like Tim.
Yes.
Tim's only 5'6".
That's right.
But he's had his trousers made with 10 inches, and they look fantastic.
And they do, actually.
So it doesn't matter if you're 5'5" or you know, my classic trousers. I'm 6'1". They're made at 10 inches as well. Same as what Tim wears.
Same as, and I think Hashim's 10 inches.
And Hashim. So it depends. We think sort of 10 inches looks good to get that full straight drop and nice profile. However, if a customer wants it, the trouser leg slimmer, then we can make it slimmer as well.
Be our guest,
All they need to do is to specify in the notes, because even with the MTM, there's a dashboard. So once basically you make your purchase, an account is created for you, there's a dashboard where you monitor the progress. Everything is in real time. You know, you monitor the progress of your garment. So there's an opportunity, there's a provision on the dashboard. It's sort of, it's a messaging system where you can actually leave specific instructions and notes on what you want done. So if you want a narrower leg opening or sort of a narrower, sort of less wide cut, then just sort of tell us. If you want it wider, like what I'm wearing, or like my super full white, like some like sort of the full Oxford bag look, you can also tell us.
And they'll adjust the thigh
the
in the factory.
Absolutely. So we can take it from the standard 8.5, 9 to 10 inches. We can take it to 12 if that's your cup of tea.
Indeed.
So there's quite a fair bit of play, flexibility there, even with the MTM, as far as the profile of the trousers.
So the customer still is king.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Because I think that's something that people value in MTM is being able to exert quite a bit of their own will over the product, if not the process. Now, somebody put a comment on Instagram about a week ago. I think he saw one of the promotional adverts that we put up. And he said, what's the difference between you and, he named a competitor who probably price-wise comes in a fair bit below us. And, of course, the difference is the style, ultimately. Because other people have factories, they can make suits out of cloth, but we have a particular style, don't we?
Well, yes, it's the style, and that's really why people come to us, really, if you think about it. It's the style, but it's also the quality, the construction.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why. You see, a lot of the MTM you see out there is made in China. I'd say a good 90% of the MTM out there, including Suit Supply.
Wow.
Right? And it's ilk. I don't want to sort of name names here before the whatever they come after me. But I don't want to name them. But you get my point.
I do.
A lot of the mainstream MTM houses that you see around there, a lot of that stuff, 90%, 95% of it is made in China, right? And maybe some other South Asian countries like Vietnam, where of course labor is cheaper,
right?
And sort of they can churn out these things in large numbers. When we were starting the MTM process, we looked at many factories. We looked at factories in China. They made samples for us, okay? So we went through a vetting process. We looked at factories in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in China, and of course in Japan. Now, of all these options we looked at least, we interviewed at least 5 different workshops to work with. The Japanese were the most expensive.
Right.
And we ended up going with them.
Yeah.
Why? Because the quality was head and shoulders above everything else. It wasn't even close.
Okay.
So for us, it was a question of, yes, everybody wants to pay, want to sort of want to have it done at the lowest price, right? We want to offer the customer the lowest price possible. But we've invested a ton of money, resources, and time in building the brand AskOkey.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that whatever we create is congruent
to the
brand that we've created.
Absolutely, yes.
You know, we cannot, for the sake of filling a hole in the pyramid, which we've talked about, we cannot just sort of, for the sake of filling a pyramid, just sort of go pick a product and say, okay, let's just sort of stick it in there just so some people can have access to an AskOkey garment. No, it doesn't sort of it doesn't dovetail. It's not aligned with our ethos.
No.
So in the end, after interviewing all these, going through sort of all these workshops, right? We had to go with what we felt was sort of in alignment with our own brand and sort of what we've invested in creating the brand, and at least especially, specifically the bespoke product. So it's not that we want the MTM to, MTM will never be bespoke.
Yes.
It's the same label. It's the AskOkey label that's going to go on it. And we have to take pride,
of course,
in whatever garment you see this label in. So we're not going to shortchange. We're not going to compromise that.
Yes, exactly.
So when you talk about other people, other kind of competition, or I wouldn't even call them competition, that's a sort of other MTM shops being, cheaper. Yes, they're cheaper.
And there's a reason for it.
And there's a reason for it, right? There's a reason why everything is cheaper. It's not cheaper because they just feel like they're being magnanimous.
Right. Yes.
So with our MTM, we priced it very aggressively. Very aggressively, considering our costs. We'd rather, sort of have a modest margin on it than just offer basic
piece of junk,
pedestrian piece of junk, and make a huge margin. Eventually, our brand suffers in the long term.
Of course. And
so we'd rather sort of make a smaller margin, but sort of allow the brand building process to continue uninterrupted, even with an introduction of the MTM line.
Yeah, and of
so
course,
I hope that answers.
No, it does, and I hope you know who you are, who asked the question. You've been answered. Of course, that's what Pierre Cardin did, didn't he? And he was a very, very successful, very high-end guy. And then he started licensing his brand. And pretty well anybody could get a license. And suddenly, everything had his name on it. And it wasn't, I don't know who was doing the licensing for him, but literally anything could have his name on it. And it completely gutted out his brand equity. But it made him ubiquitous at the same time. So for a while there, I mean, obviously he was raking it in, wasn't he, in his licensing fees? But it didn't help in the long run. And now I can see that. So the customer gets the AskOkey garment. It's MTM. It's not bespoke. He uses AI to take his measurements. It's all done on the website, like the bespoke product process.
Correct.
And then it's shipped out to him. What does he do if he finds that, well, it's unlikely that the sleeves will be too long or too short because of the reliability of the measurement?
Correct.
But what does he do if it is?
Well, I mean, again, there's nothing revolutionary here. If you went to Saks Fifth Avenue and you bought a suit, right, and you found out that the sleeves were just a tad too long or too short, what do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, you take it to somebody and he alters
exactly.
it.
Exactly. You take to a neighborhood alterations tailor. So if we have a customer who is in Colombia, which we do, and we've shipped him an MTM suit, right, and he finds out that he would prefer the sleeves to be a quarter inch shorter. Like, for instance, I like to wear my sleeves very, very, showing just the slithers. Some people may prefer to sort of show half an inch or three quarters of an inch. It's just basically personal preference. You can take it to your alterations tailor.
Sure.
And if indeed you had, within reason, we would even sort of offer you some kind of a rebate to do that.
Sure.
If it's something, it's really hard to see a situation where we see sort of an egregious, egregious margin between sort of what was expected and what was delivered. I don't foresee that. But in the event that there is, of course, we are responsible, vendors who take full responsibility for it, and you would at least at a minimum receive some kind of compensation for altering it locally.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not talking structural issues. I'm talking things like maybe lengthening the trousers, a quarter of an inch or half inch if you prefer it that way, and things of that nature. I mean, we're happy to sort of offer if whether it's a store credit
Right,
or actually a cash refund. This either is possible. But again,
Right.
I don't see, I hardly foresee a situation where that's going to be a major problem.
So, for example, if somebody wants patch pockets and he gets regular pockets, the alterations guy can't.
You can't do that where that's a failure in communication, which is probably impossible because everything we do is digital.
Yeah, and everything gets checked.
So everything gets checked, it's documented. That's why it's not like some guy, in a store writing down, taking your order. The order is digital, it's on the file, and several people, it goes through sort of several stations before the garment is finished. So it's really almost impossible. I don't see a situation where it slips through all the checks and balances all the way through the end.
Indeed.
So that is what I would call an egregious margin between sort of what was ordered and what was
that
delivered.
is egregious.
Something like that is just irresponsible, right? And we've created enough checks and balances in the system that I don't see us falling into that.
No, and again, that sort of assurance is what the customer is paying for as well, isn't it?
Right.
So, where's next for your travels?
Well,
going back to Japan, or where are you going?
Well, I mean, for now, I'm staying put at HQ and just sort of keeping an eye on all the moving parts. Tim is going to be in the workshop. As one might expect, he's our head of operations. So he's going to be very, very close to the pulse, in a manner of speaking. He will be physically in Japan, actually, and then we'll have other members of the team cycle through the workshop as and when needed.
Sure.
The media team, operations team, at some level, sort of management team, reviews. So it's a deep partnership that we've entered into with our workshop there. So we have our workshop staff there. We have the senior leadership there.
Yes.
Which, like I said again, we sort of create. It's just great chemistry there.
Excellent.
So occasionally we'll have sort of part of the corporate management will go there and do sort of like reviews. But other than that, to start with, right now the focus is more on getting the product right. So it's more the operations people, the clothing team that are going to be, almost a permanent fixture in the workshop for the next few weeks and months, starting with our head of operations team.
Well, it'll be fun to get some media from there, because I think all the people out there, the followers and subscribers and so forth, I think would be very interested to see what's going on. They've heard all about it. They've seen advertisements sort of constantly for the last week or two for it. And no doubt images of work in progress, and Tim and yourself and everybody there will be something to look forward to.
Well, we do have some. I mean, while I was there, I was able to sort of get quite a bit of footage of the behind the scenes. But again, Pete, you have to, our communication. So it's interesting. You have to bear in mind how we market and communicate our products. So a lot of the media we communicate on social platforms, right? Is for consumption. For general consumption, what I would call top of the funnel. So these are people who are just passing by. They're not necessarily what you would call the highly informed.
Sure.
So at the top of the funnel, it's just people sort of passing by. So it's more visuals of the completed product, right? It's more photo shoots, it's more videos, it's things sort of to market. Now, for those who want to know a little bit more about the process, we have our Instagram stories where we are quite active with sort of more BTS, we would say, behind the scenes. They're not as highly polished. The images or the videos are not as highly polished as what we show on our main on our main feed or grid. But we do show a lot of the back of the scenes or behind the scenes footage on our IG story. So, for those who might be interested in learning more about the back of the scenes, every now and then we do show sort of the behind the scenes workings.
On the IG stories,
On
everybody.
the IG stories,
Keep
absolutely.
your eye
Yes.
on the IG stories then, and that's where you'll see it. And one question here, and it was, you mentioned the wide and narrow legs. There are some people who are very concerned about lapels, wondering if they can get narrower lapels. And I suppose they could specify that on the dashboard.
Correct.
If they wanted narrow lapels.
Correct.
There you go.
Correct. I think, again, you know, the standard classic width for a lapel, standard is about 9 cm, 3.5 cm, which is, but again, standard is neither here nor there because we're all shaped differently. So when they say standard, I would presume sort of the average person, whatever that means. But I think, again, the pattern scales up and scales down. Right? So if we choose sort of a standard of 3.5 for the average person, whatever that might be, you know, the bigger you are, the bigger your measurements are, of course, it's going to scale accordingly.
That's right.
But if you specifically want overpowering lapels or let's say narrow lapels, I suppose you could sort of specify. You could sort of, you know, you could specify
6-inch lapels or something.
And you know, perhaps within reason, we might be able to accommodate that. Within reason, Pete.
There you go. Yeah, no, because we don't want people walking around in odd-looking things with AskOkey's name on them. So, Prof, I think that wraps us up for this evening, or today, rather. Everybody out there, don't forget, made to measure, key word there, made to measure, MTM. If you haven't ordered your made to measure suit, jacket, or classic trousers, you know what to do. Go to the website, and there's a special MTM section of the website. And if you have any queries or anything, send us a bell on the website, and we'll get back to you and talk to you about that. Prof, thank you very much.
Pete,
yes.
I'd like to add that it's been, what a journey.
Oh, indeed, yes.
What a journey. And just sort of my own, typically I let Pete close these things out, but this is just my own personal, shall I say, it's not an appeal, it's so much more of sort of a show of gratitude. I want to say thank you to all of you who've supported AskOkey through this journey. It wasn't so long ago, 2022 to be specific, where we were a relative unknown.
Indeed.
And to think that today, barely 3.5 years later, AskOkey is a household name across the world. I mean, I don't want to sound self-congratulatory, but I was being stopped on the streets in Tokyo and in Korea.
Wow.
Absolutely, I was astounded.
Yeah.
Everywhere. You know, in Itaewon, in Gangnam district, in Seoul, in Ginza, in all parts of. So
amazing.
It just shows you sort of the breadth, right? The reach and breadth that we've been able to, you know, thanks to all of you.
Thanks to everybody out there.
Thanks to all of you that we've been able to accomplish in this last few years. So this MTM is just another, let's say, stripe on the shoulders, right? To sort of, to basically, it confirms that we're here. The brand is here to stay. We've been sort of, might even say, validated for our unique proposition. And what we're trying to do with this MTM is just to make it more available.
That's right.
Or to make it available to more people.
Absolutely.
In a manner
Absolutely.
of speaking.
Yes, indeed.
So it's absolutely a phenomenal product, nothing short of the excellence that we have come to be known for. Not a thread out of place, in that the only difference is that it's a machine-made version of our handmade bespoke garment at a very, very reasonable, and I would say priced aggressively.
Indeed.
Priced aggressively.
Indeed, yes.
So please, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, please check it out at least. And I hope that in checking it out that you will be compelled that there's enough value in there for you to at least try it out.
Indeed, seconded, Prof, seconded.
Yes. So thank you.
Great stuff.
That was my own, compliment to your remarks.
Welcome. So that's all from us today, and we look forward to being back with you very, very soon. Bye for now from me, and it's good night from him, as they say.
Of course. Thank you very much, Peter. Always a great pleasure.
Cheerio. Bye for now.